Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sarina Fazan, and we are on Countdown to Tampa Bay 55. So excited to be broadcasting. I like to say out of my news set here at CP Communications and Red House Streaming, my co-anchor, very familiar name in the Tampa Bay market and really across the country. I mean, you've done so many stories. You've covered every single president. You've covered every Super Bowl that's been here.
But it's been here, yeah.
But it's been here. And yes, and joining us via Zoom, Bellisari brothers, Greg and Steve, one of them playing against Tom Brady in college, that is Steve. Greg Bellisari playing for the Buccaneers, and currently you're an orthopedic surgeon, right, Greg?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been practicing now over 10 years, which is kind of hard to believe, but yeah, practice in Columbus, Ohio, and keeps me busy.
It's pro football with you. Okay, how exciting of a time is
It has come, obviously, because of the pandemic. It's very different this year. But from where we came in 1984 with the first Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, where everybody was scared to death because they knew it could propel Tampa Bay to become more of a community where people would come for conventions and all. Obviously, we got the Republican several years ago. But they also knew if we blew it, that nothing would ever happen again in Tampa Bay in terms of an event of this magnitude. And so now here we are with our fifth Super Bowl coming to Tampa Bay. Obviously, it was just a wild time back then. Scared it wasn't going to do well.
And talk about making history as well for this Super Bowl. I mean, for the first time ever in NFL history, the home team of the Super Bowl. So let's turn to Greg Bellisari, who actually played for the Tampa Bay Bucs. Greg, tell us about that. When did you play? What was your experience like?
Well, I was really fortunate. I played my rookie season was 97-98 season, and I was there for the 2 years. I had just unbelievable people there, and coaches. Coach Dungy, amazing men I've ever. The defensive staff that I played for was Monty Kiffin, Rod Marinelli, Louis Edwards, and all those guys were prominent figures in football still to this day. And so I was very privileged to be a part of that. And I was actually there at a time when they were really turning the corner, really getting to a point where we'd made the playoffs my rookie year, and we had made the turning point for the Bucs into kind of what we know as the modern history and the Super Bowl win sprinkled in there. It was a really great experience. Obviously, NFL never ends the way you want it, but I enjoyed all my time there.
Were you part of the team that went to Green Bay? Under Dungy? That was I was there for that week. It was awfully cold.
Yeah.
Man.
I got a funny story about that.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things I actually vividly remember, because at that point I think we had not won a game. You guys can help me with the degree, but it was like maybe below 45, right?
I think it was below 32. Like below freezing, you had never won a game.
Right. So I'm a rookie from Ohio State thinking, gosh, we're really tough. So I talked the linebacker room into wearing short sleeves. Of course, if you're playing in the game, the weather is kind of relevant. You're keeping your body warmth. Of course, I'm a rookie. I'm not starting. I'm not playing. I'm running down the field as fast as I can on special teams, and then running to the sideline and waiting 15 minutes and then going back out and running back down. Well, that's the worst weather to be doing that, right? To be doing bursts of speed and then sitting. And I was miserable. I mean, so we, unfortunately, as you know, that was I think a divisional round. We didn't win that game, and Brett Favre, for the third time in 1 year, pulled a lot of magic out. And but I vividly remember that being pretty cold.
It was freezing. I tried to stay because I could go to the press box, but I wanted to be on the frozen tundra of Green Bay. I stayed on the field as long as I could before I had to scoot to the press box. But my favorite part of that is we got to Lambeau Field at 8:30 that morning, and it was packed.
Wow.
Everybody had been tailgating, and they were toasted. I mean, absolutely toasted at 8:30. And they saw we had Tampa Bay stuff on. They'd go, "Hey, Tampa Bay, you want a beer? You want a brat? You want a shot?" And we went a little early for that. They said, "Oh, the game's not for 4 hours. You'll mind." But they were very friendly people.
Oh, yeah.
Cold. Holy cow.
It's really cold. Their fans are amazing, though. You can see why they have a tradition there. And interestingly, Jerry Wunsch was a center from where his family made it to the Green Bay games, and we had the same experience after the game. It was a pretty cool place.
And you know, Greg, you mentioned Tony Man I have ever met, and Monty Kiffin and that whole crew. I mean, amazing.
I got Tony Dungy.
Okay.
I was, after college, I was working in Jackson, Michigan at a radio station. I did some TV in Flint, but the high school football games of the high schools there, and we did 4 games. We did 2 on AM, 2 on FM, and I did the timeline broadcasting some of the games where Tony Dungy was the quarterback for Jackson High School.
That's
I'm old, guys. I'm really old.
So Mike said he has been working in broadcast for 50 years.
Yeah,
I can share that, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that prior to going on camera. Well, Steve Bellisari, right at Ohio State. Tell us about that. And there's many questions I have, but why don't you share that story?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play against him twice, actually. We were both very different for me because my freshman year I was actually playing, so really had to try to prepare against him in a totally different light, whereas my sophomore year playing quarterback. And that was a year, unfortunately, and if you look at the history of Ohio State, we've been really good recently, actually exceptional. And I would say we were kind of transitioning to that time, and we were 6-6, didn't have a great year, and Tom just had some head down and just playing hard and focusing on the task in front of you, which I think you've seen him do throughout his career consistently and done it very well.
So he gave you advice directly, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take all the advice I can get.
Well, you know, Steve, one of the things that I have read is all the Buccaneers say leader and does give out advice and talks to them and is hard on them and himself, and that he could not do that with Belichick.
Right, like Bruce Arians gives him the rope.
But Belichick. So I mean, this guy was a natural-born leader from even way back in college when he was in Michigan.
Yeah, no question. I think if there's one thing Tom in his career is consistency. What you're seeing him do on the field isn't all that different of what he was doing at the end of the year out, and he's been that consistent leader every step of the way.
So let me ask you guys this, and talking about what you mentioned, Mike, earlier, and what Greg going to Wisconsin and the stands, the stadium being packed, right? So clearly, right now we live in unprecedented times. COVID, we're not going to be able to fill all of the stands. Talk about that energy. Like you guys both played pro, right? Steve, you also played pro as well for the Rams. Did you play for the Rams?
Yep, I gave it the college try, I guess you could say. Was there for about a year and a half, and then did arena football for about 5. So a little bit. Yeah, I tried professionally as long as I could.
Did you guys ever play against each other where your parents had?
No. Unfortunately, we just missed each other.
Okay.
But they made history, at Ohio State at different times. So history, adrenaline of fans. Does that really? What are the players dealing with like right now without being able to fill the stadiums? Either of you guys can answer.
I think it's really I think it's really hard. I've been to sporting events over this COVID to the Columbus Blue Jackets here, and I think it takes a lot. Everybody that shows up in a professional capacity is a pro, and they're going to go out and give their best effort. But it does play a big role during the course of a game. Not having that reaction when a big play happens, I think affects them. And oppositely, it's hard to demoralize a team. In other words, you can somebody pretty fast, but it doesn't have the same weight when your crowd's not behind it. So it is kind of a fun. You're seeing the I hate to use these terms, but the Grizzly vets doing well and thriving in this scenario because of the ups and downs of the fans as much. But it definitely is different. It's just a weird phenomenon.
It worked to the Bucs' advantage, the fact that they won 3 road games in the playoffs in some normally very noisy spots. I mean, the Superdome is crazy with noise where you can't even hear the count from the quarterback, and they didn't have many penalties for jumping off legal motion. And then Green Bay, you guys know how loud it gets in Green Bay. So because they had to play all their playoff games, the Bucs' advantage. Because I could hear Brady calling off the audibles, off the team doing that.
It's a huge advantage to the offense. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was going to say, I mean, the reality is, as an offensive player, being able to communicate effectively and get your players in the right position or make those adjustments is so pivotal. And you spoke to it. You tried to do that at the Superdome or in Green Bay. It's really difficult. So giving someone like Tom Brady the ability to communicate and everyone be on that same page has been a huge advantage, in my opinion.
So how do you guys think this will affect the Super Bowl, though? The big game, the game of all games, where you want everybody to be there. How do you think it's going to affect guys?
You know, I think Greg brought it up. I mean, momentum's a real thing, and you look at the different levels of players, and I think Grizzly vets, this is old hat. They're going to show up and do their job. I think the emotion of it, you'll see that play out. But, I mean, we saw that happen in the national championship game this year. But that momentum swung so quickly, they really didn't have those fans back. So I think it'll have an effect. But the reality is, I think it'll help the offenses more than anything, allow them to get a lot more done.
But I think, especially for the young guys, as you talk about, there's such a high in playing in the Super Bowl that they will be laser focused. I mean, even a guy, a veteran who's never been until this year in a playoff game, all those great 1,000-yard receptions that he's had the first 7 years, but never been in a playoff. So I think that they will all be so laser focused. It appeared that way. I was in San Diego for the Bucs win in San Diego, which was just terrific.
Yeah, it was insane.
It was insane. But they all, and we did a lot of interviews beforehand and then clearly afterwards, and they were all so focused on the game. Some of them, I think, just made the crowd go away, because all they were focused on was winning, which you could see.
I know you can see it. You can see it. Well, Greg, speaking of that, you're really, really close to Rondé Barber, who, of course, was on that team, on that Super Bowl winning team. You must have stories.
Rondé and I, yeah. Well, we were rookie roommates. That's
winning team. You must have stories.
Rondé and I, yeah. Well, we were rookie roommates. That's one of my dear godparents. I'm like my godparents to his two girls, and he's no pressure for my son, of course. But he's a great guy. Obviously, not only a super talented guy, but a super intelligent guy and a great friend. It was a privilege to play with him. And when I was there, actually, the short time I was there, he was still kind of climbing the ladder, learning the ropes of being an NFL cornerback, and you could see the potential, obviously. But I think a lot of Rondé is a very similar player to Tom Brady in the sense of just the mental capability and the toughness to deliver time and time again consistently is something to. I think that's what you respect about any player who's made it in the league more than 5 years.
He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, look at seriously.
Right.
No doubt.
His stats, and then he has the greatest play in my mind in Bucs. I still get goosebumps.
I'm serious. I'm wearing long sleeves right now. I wish you could see my goosebumps, but I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Philadelphia game, and I knew I was going to cover it if the Bucs won.
Gosh.
That interception, I had a bunch of friends at my house. I kept screaming, "Run, Rondé, run! I'm going to the Super Bowl! I'm going to the Super Bowl!" Just a great play, a great guy. But really, he deserves, and so does Lynch too. It's hard to, from a fan standpoint, as well. Both of them, just people that you want to emulate, that you want your kids, your son, not only great athletes, but great people, which ultimately is so much more important.
Right, and Greg, if you can talk about too, since you are, so close to Rondé and Steve as well, just the perspective, what are they going through right now as they're getting ready for the big game?
Well, I think you guys hit it on the head. That laser focus, that internal pressure is going to be there, and I think almost in some ways it sounds counterintuitive, but the Super Bowl fan, it's a split crowd anyway. It's probably more important for those earlier playoff games, but the laser focus and the internal pressure will be there. I think sometimes the not knowing what you're under or the pressure that's around you is almost sometimes better. And the people, the teams, and the players that can focus on those small details to win the football game are the ones that are going to come out on top. And that's where it's at. and the coaches know it. That's what they focus on all week or for 2 weeks. And sometimes you can overthink it, and it's really just about playing loose, playing fast, but being laser focused when you're out there.
What do you guys think? Not often do the two Super Bowls have had an opportunity to play each other during the season. I mean, the Bucs did well against the opponents they played against, beating twice, and then losing to them twice. The fact that Kansas City and Tampa Bay have played each other, how does that factor in? Is it an advantage for any? No.
It's hard to say. I would say, to Greg's point, you eliminate the noise these 2 weeks going into it, and I think the Super Bowl is going to be more about what each individual team's going to do versus the other one. And I know that sounds really simple, but it really gets down to the team that's going to execute. And when those one-on-one focus becomes internal, it's great to have some experience and know what they're capable of doing, but this is really more about Tampa Bay's ability to go execute versus the schemes or offense that can.
And don't you guys think it's a great matchup and it's going to be a great game? Because oftentimes we get to the Super Bowl and, it can be a landslide, right? Or one team is of course you're enjoying the Super Bowl, but it seems like these two are really well matched up.
I agree. I mean, I won't talk about that, but, from a defensive matchup standpoint, the Buccaneers fare really well. They're one of the few teams in the NFL that can match up with this offense. And, both mentally by scheme and by speed and ability. So that's what I find really intriguing in this game is Kansas City's looking at that film going, they're one of the few teams that can hang with us.
Well, in having Vita Vea back, it really made a difference. I think that in Sunday's game, or two Sundays ago, it gave Shaq Barrett an opportunity to be wild, JPP, White, because you him, Vita Vea, or you're going to get those other guys. And he was still with two guys pushing back to ride, pushing two guys, the other guys. I think that's really significant. He wasn't in the Kansas City game. He was still recovering from the broken ankle. So I think that is a huge difference on defense.
It'll be really interesting to see when it all plays out. Greg, I wanted to ask you, though, speaking of playing out, from a physician's standpoint, what are these guys, how much, they take some hard hits on the field. So can you just talk about that, like the physical, like what they're going through on the field?
Well, there's no doubt. You can liken every single contact point to a car collision. There's that much force in just an offensive and defensive lineman play, for example. So the forces are immense. The way that athletes train has really improved their health and decreased the amount of injuries throughout a season. It's well known that, at least in the medical side of things, that by the end of a season, fatigue of even small muscles such as your core puts you at risk for other injuries. And so fight in the training during this year is really crucial. And most athletes, almost by self-selection, don't make it to that level unless they have that internal drive to train, some genetics that are in their favor. But it's a lot of wear and tear.
Wow,
in that same vein, what about the concussion protocol with Mahomes? As a fan, but as a physician, does it give you concern that he still might have some hangovers from that concussion?
Concussions. Well, I'll start by saying if you put 50 doctors in a room and ask them to define a concussion, I don't think one single definition would be the same. So if you start with that premise, it makes it difficult to say what exactly he had. You never really head bonk, but there are guys that can even get concussions from getting hit hard in the chest. We see it in car accidents all the time. All that being said, my off-the-cuff analysis of that is he did have a concussion, obviously. I don't think it was severe. I don't suspect he had lingering symptoms. Based on the NFL protocol, if he was already practicing that following week, he likely had completely normal scores on all of his tests and didn't have many symptoms when he started to do any challenges such as exercise. So I suspect he had a mild concussion. I don't think it'll be lingering. I think we're going to get full Pat Mahomes.
Well, speaking of practicing and playing, though, at the very beginning, and Steve, Greg, both feel free to weigh in on this. So at the very beginning, with all the COVID protocols, they weren't practicing like they typically do. So how much of an impact does that have on players?
I think no preseason games, and I think it's fair to say the football at the beginning of the NFL season across the board wasn't great. And finally saw players getting their stride and getting comfortable and knowing their spots and who, how and who they're going to work with play out now in the playoffs. And that's been the difference.
I know it's been so, I've been noticing.
Oh, yeah, and even Brady said it took a while for them to gel. And they also said the Chicago game was a turning point because they won that game. They had so many penalties, and they said, we are a better team than this. But it was almost like they were doing preseason up to Chicago, lost their first game with Chicago, and then said, we got to turn this around, guys. But especially when you get a brand new quarterback with a whole new system. There were times when he and Evans weren't always on the same page, although they were, thankfully, a lot of the times. But, it takes a while to know where the play is where you're supposed to be.
What that Bears game really was the turning point. Like, I felt that's when after that game.
Absolutely. And I think the Bucs will tell you that as well.
Okay. Did Tom Brady lead us to that point, lead us to this point? Is he the reason we are in the game?
Yeah. Come on. Jameis Winston could throw. He was amazing at times. He could throw the ball extremely well. Brady has had some interceptions, but that's rare. And he comes back, and his accuracy is there. The team foundation was there, but the quarterback is the driver of the vehicle. And we needed a new driver, and Tom Brady is, the ultimate.
Do you agree?
Bias, right? I'm a quarterback, and I probably thought I was a lot better than I really was in reality. But one of the things that I would say Tom Brady does, and this has been really true of any great quarterback or leader for that matter, in a game you're going to make mistakes. You pointed to those interceptions. It's how you recover from those and manage them. And if I look at some of the greatest to ever play the position, Joe Montana, Tom Brady,
Brett Favre,
you name it, they all made those mistakes, but their ability to pull that team together, component of that. But I also look at what Coach Arians and personnel-wise and the things that they all put together. On the flip side of that, and my brother can attest to this, that defense in tune too, because the reality is, as a quarterback, when you throw that interception, you're putting that defense in a really tough spot where that becomes a problem. So the reality is, there's that two-way street, and I think that's where Tom's mastered this. The best quarterbacks have, but, to your point, Tom.
How about you, Greg? What are your thoughts about it? Tom Brady, the piece of the puzzle the Tampa Bay Buccaneers needed?
I think he's clearly the statistics that have been thrown around the last 2 weeks now that we knew he was going to the Super Bowl are just absurd. Some of the things he's done in his career. And so it's not by happenstance, right? It happens because of the hard work and the mental acuity that he has and just the unbelievable production he's had. So I think he is the linchpin. Obviously, the framework was there for the Bucs to be there, but he's the linchpin.
The other key guys, it seems to me, this is a non-selfish team. Everybody, because look at all the receivers. I have seen teams where, one guy is like the Bucs, they just want to score. They don't care. You can't underestimate that effect. Take Clippers, and he seems almost as happy to block as well as catch a 20-yard pass, and he is protected. I've seen guys coming in, and he's just laid them out. And whether it's Mike Evans or AB or Chris, they all are pulling for the other guy. And I think
that camaraderie really shows. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's you got to give the coaches credit for that. The coach and won't allow, and Arians had jumped on Brady's case when he screwed up. It's equal all across, and the players seem to appreciate that and understand that. I think that's a big factor in the Bucs.
The fun team to watch. This football season has been great. Now Tampa Bay is making history again. The first, home team, their city. We're making do. We've had some great guests on the podcast talking about the financial impact. I just want to thank you, Steve and Greg, both of them playing former professional football, both making history as captains of two brothers, for joining us. We really so much. And Mike Deeson, I've got to throw out, I've got to give you a plug for your book here. Bad news for you is good news for me. 50 years of broadcasting right here. So where can we get the book?
Amazon. It's on Amazon, and the Audible will be out in the next couple of weeks as well.
Are you going to be voicing the Audible?
I did.
You did? That's fantastic.
Let me tell you, I have read thousands of my scripts over the years. That's not hyperbole. Reading a 230 is a bear. Thank goodness for editing. It articulate, but it was quite the project to narrate your own book. But I really enjoyed it and enjoyed writing it. And again, it's on Amazon. Bad news for you is good news for me. I hope you like it. A lot of sports stories in there, as well as investigative stories.
Well, I'm very excited to read it. Thank you, General Manager of the studios here at CP Communications and Red House Streaming. You need to sign it for me.
I definitely will.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm Sarina Fazan. You can watch the podcast and all my podcasts on Facebook, YouTube, and of course on my podcast channel, On the Record with Sarina Fazan. Please follow me on social media, making history together. Stay safe, but have fun as well. Thanks for watching.
What if you had to choose between fixing the roof over your head and putting food on the table? Mold growing in your home. Focus on finding a new job, or your children could no longer focus on learning. What if you no longer had a safe place to call home? Neighbors who have lost jobs and have to make those difficult choices. Text REBUILD to 484848.
O-negative blood is the universal blood donor. It goes to trauma victims, it goes to newborn babies, and everybody else. Blood is needed no matter what. And I know that I'm helping at least 3 people with 1 unit of blood, that they're able to save lives. I'm universal. I'm unique. I'm O-negative.